Hey, friend, and welcome back to the YouTube channel for the Renaissance English History Podcast. I am Heather. I have been podcasting on Tudor England since 2009, 15 years of Tudor podcasting. This channel is where I put all of my episodes as well as extra content like this video right here on Henry VIII's companions when he was young. If you like Tudor history, I do invite you to subscribe to this channel so that you can Tudorify your YouTube algorithm. So today we are going to talk about the companions that Prince Henry had when he was young, the boys and young men that his family had chosen to surround him with. But before we get into that, your quick reminder that TudorCon is coming up in 9 days. 9 days, you guys, craziness. And you can join us from anywhere in the world thanks to the streaming ticket. It is, of course, happening in Agecroft Hall in Richmond, Virginia. In-person tickets are sold out, so I'm sorry you can't come in person. But you can join us online with the streaming ticket, get access to all of the talks live, fun community that's going to be having great chats. There's prizes, there's giveaways, entertainment, all kinds of good stuff. Plus, you get lifetime access to all of the recordings. So head on over to englandcast.com/TudorCon online to learn more about that. All right, so when Henry VIII ascended to the throne in 1509, he brought with him a group of trusted companions, many of whom had been with him since his youth. These young men were not just court officials, but they were also close friends who shaped the young prince as he grew into a king. Their influence extended far beyond the court's halls, impacting Henry's military ambitions, his political strategy, and his personal life. Today, like I said, we're going to talk about four key figures: William Fitzwilliam, Anthony Browne, Henry Courtnay, and Charles Brandon, who stood by Henry in his early years and through some of the most pivotal moments of his reign. Let's start with William Fitzwilliam, the loyal Navy commander. William Fitzwilliam was born into a noble family around the same time as Henry VIII, around 1490, and it was his half-brother Anthony Browne who actually connected him to the Tudor court. He was chosen to be one of Prince Henry's companions, a position that would define his life. His early exposure to court politics and military service set the stage for his future roles under Henry VIII. So he was raised in the household with Prince Henry, went to school with Prince Henry, and then when Prince Henry became King Henry, he was made a gentleman usher and king's cupbearer, and he gradually rose through the ranks at court. And then he began his military career at sea, where he quickly rose through the ranks. He eventually became the vice admiral. His naval prowess was critical during England's conflicts with France. He helped patrol the English Channel, and he defended against piracy and supported military campaigns. His loyalty and competence earned him the king's trust, and he was knighted after the capture of Tournai in 1513. As Henry's reign progressed, Fitzwilliam's loyalty became even more crucial. He played a significant role in the fall of Anne Boleyn, helping to ensure the Queen's removal from power. Later on, he was instrumental in managing unrest in England's northern territories after the Pilgrimage of Grace and securing the crown's interest in Calais. So a couple of interesting tidbits about him. He was known as Henry VIII's enforcer. Like I said, he helped bring down Anne Boleyn and also Catherine Howard. And he was one of the people who went to question Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury, and would have eventually hold her prisoner until May of 1539. Margaret Pole, of course, was the Countess of Salisbury in her own right. She was the one that was executed by Henry VIII in a very grisly way. She was an old woman. The whole thing was just a mess. I've done episodes on her. I will link to them somewhere up here. Anyway, so one of the other interesting tidbits about him, though, is because he was the admiral of the Navy, he conveyed Anne of Cleves from Calais. And when he first met her, he was one of the people writing letters talking about how pretty she was and praising her to the king. And when he was questioned about that later, because, of course, the marriage went sour, he said that he considered that it wasn't good not to praise her because the matter had been so far past. So it's kind of like it was already done. He was going to go ahead and say nice things about her because it was clear she was going to become queen. So that is William Fitzwilliam. He stayed loyal to the king until his death in 1542. Next up, Anthony Browne, half brother to William Fitzwilliam. He was also raised with the royal family. He was a little younger than Henry. He was about maybe 8 or 9 years younger than Henry, so he wouldn't have been raised with Henry in the same way. But he came from a noble family, so he was raised at court. He stayed close friends to Henry. He became the master of the horse. He went and suppressed the Pilgrimage of Grace as well. One of Henry's kind of core group of guy buddies. He also has a connection to Anne of Cleves because it was Anthony Browne that Henry met with when Henry went down to Rochester to meet Anne of Cleves early, when he surprised her because he was playing that game where he was like hiding and pretending he wasn't himself and that whole thing. So he's with Anthony Browne when that was going on. Then, of course, he met Anne of Cleves, was so super disappointed with her. And it was on their return trip on the royal barge back to Greenwich that Henry confided in Browne and said just how disappointed he was in Anne. It's funny because sometimes the way Henry's portrayed in books and in film is, that everybody was afraid to talk to him except maybe Charles Brandon. Charles Brandon was like the only one that could talk to Henry. Anthony Browne also had an in and could speak to Henry pretty freely. He was actually the person who told Henry in 1547 that he was going to die. He was with Henry at the end, and he also stood beside Prince Edward as he made his entry into London as the next king. Browne also was a kind of general, useful in lots of different ways sort of person. He served as an ambassador to France, and he was a central figure at court who really was just kind of helping to shape the monarchy behind the scenes. Then we have Henry Courtney. Now, I've done a series on the Courtney family. Things did not end well for them. In 1538, there was the Exeter conspiracy, where that was what Margaret Pole was part of, the whole kind of downfall of anybody who had any Plantagenet blood left in their veins. They were quickly extinguished. But before that all happened, Henry Courtney was cousins with Henry VIII, and they were very good friends. So Henry Courtney, the Earl of Devon, was related to Henry VIII. They were cousins. So, of course, Edward IV married Elizabeth Woodville, and they had several children. Elizabeth of York was one of those children. She married Henry VII, Henry Tudor, and they had Henry VIII, right? But there was another daughter. Obviously, Elizabeth of York wasn't the only daughter of Elizabeth Woodville and Edward IV. They had another daughter, Catherine of York, and that was Edward Courtney's mother. So they were first cousins. He and Henry VIII were first cousins. He was also 7-8 years younger than Henry. He was born in 1498, but he was raised at court and was destined for prominence. He would become one of Henry's most trusted companions. He shared in military campaigns with them. He enjoyed privileges that came with being in the king's inner circle. He was appointed to the Privy Council. He was eventually made Marquess of Exeter in 1525. And he went on diplomatic missions. He played a role in the downfall of Anne Boleyn. He aligned himself with the conservative faction at court. But his fortunes would change dramatically during the Exeter conspiracy in 1538. His connections to the Pole family, also Catholics coming from Edward IV's brother, and his disaffection with the religious direction of the kingdom led to suspicions of treason. The evidence against him was scant, but his correspondence with Cardinal Reginald Pole, who was, of course, writing treatises about how bad Henry was doing and couldn't be the defender of the faith and all that kind of stuff, that would seal his fate. Courtney was arrested, he was tried, and he was executed for treason. His fall from grace was swift, a reminder of just how quickly Henry's opinions could change. I did also an episode on the Exeter conspiracy. I'll link to it somewhere. Finally, we have Charles Brandon, the king's closest friend, perhaps the most enduring and beloved of Henry VIII's companions. He was 7 years older than the future king, but his charm, his athleticism, his courtly skills quickly won Henry's favor. Henry looked up to him. He was like, the cool older brother that Henry never had. They met in their younger years. While Brandon did not grow up alongside Henry, their bond grew as the prince became king. So Charles Brandon, his father, was the flag bearer for Henry Tudor, and he died in the Battle of Bosworth. And so to kind of take care of him and recognize the sacrifice that his father had made, Charles Brandon was raised at court, and Henry Tudor took care of him, and so he became one of Henry VIII's close companions. He had a reputation as a skilled jouster, and he was a ladies' man. He was generally like just the cool guy, right? He was athletic. He got all the girls. And Henry looked up to that and just thought it was amazing. Also, Henry couldn't joust at that time. That was when Henry VII was being super protective of his son and wouldn't let Henry joust and wouldn't let Henry kind of partake in some of these super athletic things that Henry wanted to do. When Henry ascended to the throne, he elevated Brandon. He made him Duke of Suffolk in 1514. Then, of course, Brandon had the serious misstep when he married Henry's sister, Mary Tudor, without the king's permission, which wasn't something he did. But their friendship would endure. Henry initially reacted with fury, imposing a significant fine, but he quickly forgave Brandon, an indication of both the deep affection that he held for him and for his sister. The two men spent hours together. They went hunting, they went jousting, they engaged in physical pursuits, and their closeness was often remarked about at court, many noting that Brandon was, in some ways, kind of like a second king due to his influence. His loyalty was absolute, even though he disagreed with Henry on some personal matters, such as his treatment of Catherine of Aragon and his interest in Anne Boleyn. But he navigated those disagreements. He never pushed too far, and he managed to maintain his position at court. His ability to balance his personal views with his unwavering support of Henry made him absolutely indispensable. When Brandon died in 1545, Henry was heartbroken. He declared that Brandon had been one of his truest friends, and in a final act of loyalty, he ordered Brandon's burial at St. George's Chapel, Windsor, close to where he himself would later rest. These early companions of Henry VII, William Fitzwilliam, Anthony Browne, Henry Courtney, and Charles Brandon all played crucial roles in shaping the king's life and reign. Each brought unique skills and perspectives, helping to guide Henry through his youth, when, of course, Henry had a very distant father who was super overprotective and yet also didn't really talk to him that much. And these men filled in. They were his brothers, his big brothers, his little brothers, the family that he desperately wanted. And their influence extended beyond court, and a couple of them stayed with Henry for his entire life. So that is what we were talking about today, and I'm done talking. Remember your TudorCon tickets for the streaming ticket. You can join from anywhere in the world, englandcast.com/TudorCon online. We're going to have so much fun. Remember to drink your water. Very important to stay hydrated. And remember that you are deeply loved, and I'm so glad that I share the planet with you. And I will be back again very, very soon. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.